Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang Dhammang Sanghang Namasami. We're dedicating our evening to something very wholesome tonight. And this is always a nice opportunity if we would like to share the blessings of our practice with people that we're bringing into our heart. Maybe it's somebody who's suffering or somebody who's passed away, and we just want to share the blessings with them. A question about right effort. Can you put in too much effort into your practice? So, what do we even mean by right effort? Right effort is part of the foundation of the Buddha's teachings. We talk about as the Four Noble Truths. The first truth being the truth of suffering. The second truth, the cause of suffering. The third truth being the ending of suffering. And the fourth truth being the path that leads to the ending of suffering. And this path has these components of right view or right understanding, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. And right effort is traditionally taught as this effort that comes when we're aware there's something unwholesome that's arisen. We make an effort to let it go. And we make an effort to resist the arising of an unwholesome mind state, to bring about wholesome mind states. And we make the effort, when we have a wholesome mind state, to maintain that wholesome mind state. What are these wholesome and unwholesome mind states? Greed is an unwholesome mind state. And ill will, hatred, anger, jealousy, these are unwholesome mind states. And the Buddha also talked about the delusion of the ego as an unwholesome mind state. What are the wholesome mind states? These are the opposite. We could say non-greed, or you could take it even to generosity. This is a wholesome mind state. Not having ill will and not having hatred. Having kindness and compassion in our heart. Those are wholesome mind states. Kindness, compassion, joy. And not getting lost in the delusion of the ego, or we could say right view, is wholesome. When I learned about these Four Noble Truths, the foundation of the teachings that I was first introduced to, I really liked it because it was a list. And I'm a list kind of person, so I was pretty happy. Here's a series of things I'm going to do or not do. And this is a way to guide my life. Another way we describe the practice, it starts with number 1, let go of the unwholesome. And number 2, develop the wholesome. Number 3, purify the heart. So the Buddha puts letting go of the unwholesome first. Often when you read the suttas, he talks about the profound nature and potential of this path, the profound freedom from suffering that we can awaken to on this path. And the first part of it, he says you need to have a foundation of sila. You need to have a foundation of moral integrity on this path. So we learn things like the 5 precepts. Don't kill, don't steal, don't lie, don't cheat. And avoid intoxicants that make the mind more likely to do these. first 4 precepts, this basic foundation of not harming ourselves and not harming other people. This, to me, seemed to be such an obvious teaching, because I could just imagine a world that everyone kept the 5 precepts in. You imagine this. What would it be like? You never had to worry about anyone stealing from you. You never had to worry about anyone lying to you or cheating on you. So for me, when I imagined a world like that, that really inspired me to try and change, to let go of these unwholesome habits that I had. What a beautiful world it would be if we had this basic foundation of morality of not harming ourselves and other people. And then we have to accept we can't control other people, but we can set an example for other people and set this standard for ourselves, because it will not only help other people, but it will help ourselves, and we'll feel better for it. And it does have an influence. So that was the first thing I did after I was introduced to these teachings as an adult, because I didn't grow up as a Buddhist. The first thing I did was keep the 5 precepts, and people were interested. You know, I would tell them I'm doing something different. I'm not going to kill the little bugs in my apartment anymore, and I gave up drinking. I was a social drinker, and it just gets people interested in talking about. I tried to do it in a very non-judgmental way. I wasn't trying to convince anyone to take this path with me, but more let them know why I'm trying to do it, why I think this might help me understand my mind and might help me not suffer as much, make me a happier person. And we can share that with other people, and maybe they'll want to try it too. Maybe not, but you plant the seed, you set the example, and that's all we can do. So we set up this foundation, we try our best, and this really is a trying our best, because it's not about being perfect, because we've all been conditioned a lot. We've all created a lot of habits over our lifetime. And the older we are, the more habits we have. And sometimes we're around people, we've grown up around people who don't have skillful habits. And this is something a little bit more drastic for us. This is something harder for us to get used to and to change. So I grew up in a family where we had a fly swatter in every room. And you just swatted the flies when they came in the house, and everyone did it. And it never occurred to me as a child that I was harming another living being, or that I could just catch the fly and take it outside, do something different, because I didn't have that conditioning. So it wasn't until I heard this teaching, and then you meet other people who are also trying to do the same thing, or you come to a monastery and you learn all sorts of neat tricks to try and get the bugs outside without killing them. I remember at Birkin, we used to have this vacuum. We could vacuum the flies up, but it caught them. It didn't hurt them, and then you could let them outside. There's all sorts of ways to appreciate the life around you, even if you don't want it right in your space. So in this path, we really set a foundation to not harm ourselves and other people. And that really is the foundation. And then the Buddha encourages us to develop goodness and kindness in our lives. So he encourages us to develop qualities like generosity, kindness, and compassion, and service. And I feel now you can get so much more out of life giving than receiving. But it was something that I hadn't thought of when I was younger. It wasn't until I tried it out, until I really took a sense of investigation into these teachings. Because the Buddha doesn't want you to just believe that you're going to be happier if you keep the precepts. He wants you to investigate this for yourself. Try this out for yourself. It doesn't mean it's always going to be easy. It doesn't mean that we're always going to be able to get it right. But as we grow in mindfulness, as we grow in awareness of our habits, then we can start to see where these unskillful habits really are causing us suffering. Like greed, it's always pushing us to getting something new, or to doing something new, or to doing something, oh, if I have this next experience, that will make me happy. And if we have the good karma to keep jumping from one experience to another, we don't always take the time to look at the suffering that's propelling us into wanting that next experience. That's where it's really nice, where you go on retreat, or you have some structure. Like even here at the monastery, we have this structure of not eating in the afternoon. Once again, not a habit that I grew up with. And the first retreat that I did, and you didn't even have to not eat, you got a piece of fruit in the afternoon. I was absolutely terrified. I thought I'm going to starve to death. But then, honestly, I think I overate. So you overeat breakfast and lunch because you think you're going to starve, and you feel so full and drowsy. And then every day it was like, wow, I didn't really need that much. So you start to see that part of the reason you're just running after this next experience is like this habit of greed. And there's a lot of suffering around that. So when you have an opportunity to have some renunciation around that, it actually can be quite peaceful. It doesn't have to be a lack of, where it can be letting go of. Just like letting go of hatred and ill will. We can't make the conditioned mind never have a thought that we love everyone and everything in the world. That's just not how we're created as human beings. You could probably use a lot of force to block thoughts like that for a period of time. But our conditioning is, as a human being, to have the whole range of emotions and to have the whole range of experiences and have the whole range of feelings that go all the way from ecstatic joy, pleasant, to tragedy and pain and grief. That's just part of the human condition. But the beauty of this path is we learn that this human condition, this is where we get into the right view, this is not our true nature. This is not our true abiding. This is the ego abiding. This is the abiding of the self or the ego. When we can see that, there's a letting go. So we talk about on this path, we let go of the unwholesome and we develop the wholesome. And we purify the heart. So when we let go of the unwholesome and we develop the wholesome, I think that one's for me, that one was easier to understand cognitively what I was supposed to be doing. Because you can do that through analyzing, through thinking, through reflecting. And for most of us, that's really what we have trained ourselves to do. We've trained ourselves to differentiate. One of the suttas talks about we learn to see, is a thought wholesome or unwholesome? We put them in two categories. Because we've trained ourselves in this world, we call it the world of duality. We've trained ourselves in good and bad and right and wrong and wholesome and unwholesome. That's this foundation of how we understand the world. And that is the foundation of this practice. And I see the beauty. I love listening to other teachers that aren't Buddhist teachers, particularly different Advaita, Vedanta teachers, and they have a different style of how they teach, and which is very beautiful. But I don't think I would get it if I didn't have this foundation of Buddhism for myself, because I think I did try and read these or listen to these before, and I couldn't appreciate the depths of it as I could, having this foundation in Buddhism of this developing the wholesome and letting go of the unwholesome. And so I really appreciate that the Buddha understood when he's going to introduce a teaching, he's going to introduce it in a way that people understand, in a worldly way, in a mundane way. We call it the mundane way of understanding this path. Because for most people, like myself, that's the only thing I could understand. That's not how I just learned you're with the breath and you stay with the breath, and there wasn't a lot about awareness. But I like to introduce that concept to people even right at the beginning, because right now most people have only paid attention to the objects of the mind, to the thoughts, the emotions, the feelings, the perceptions, the fabrications. And we don't really know how to pay attention to the spaces between, to pay attention to what's before the arising of a thought and what's after the ending of it. Because there's nothing to pay attention to. So you're paying attention to an emptiness, and we have spent our whole life paying attention to the things that fill up the emptiness. That's what the world is. That's how we create our whole identity as a human being, is filling up the spaces in the mind and in the world that we create through this mind. So when we take this teaching to this very profound understanding, this understanding of purifying the heart. So I remember Ajahn Chah used to say, first you let go of the unwholesome, then you develop the wholesome, then you have to let go of the wholesome. Because you have to let go of everything. You have to let go of the whole duality, the whole ego. And each step of the way, you're going to find, for me anyways, more peace in your mind and more of a sense of happiness and freedom. Each step, I think, just letting go of unwholesome, just being aware, for one thing, of how unwholesome qualities affect myself and the world, I could start to feel more peace in my heart, and I felt happier. And then when I started to develop qualities with joy, generosity, kindness and compassion, even more peace, more happy. But it has its limits, because then there would still be tragedies happening in the world. There would still be things that I would really cling to, things that I had strong views about that I felt were wrong in the world. And this is where we have to see the limits. You can be the kindest, best, nicest person in the world, but you can still be suffering a lot, because maybe you want the whole world to be like that. You don't want anyone to hurt anyone else. You don't want to see the killings that are happening all around, or the tragedies, or the starvation that's still happening in a world that has so much food that gets thrown out every day. But this is how it is. This is the way of the world that's got this balance, this mix. Just like within all of us, we still have this distilled, even, I don't know any perfect human being. Can you imagine trying to make a perfect human being? Everyone's now using the AI. Maybe that's some perfection. But what is AI? It's just a creation, and it's being created by human beings, right? It's human beings that are programming the AI to tell you what to think and what to feel, and when you should be happy and when you should think something's acceptable or not. So when we can see the limits of the objects of the world, then we start to turn our mind towards this pure awareness. And to do that, we need some silence. We need to learn to become aware of the silence behind all the noise. And we need to trust it. You absolutely need to trust it. Make it the refuge, your true refuge. And it's always there. It's not something that we fabricate. It's not something that we create. We can say it's in us, or you could say we're in it. We're a creation in awareness. The ego is just a creation in awareness. I throw that out for you just to reflect upon. So there's definitely this effort we put into our practice, especially effort to develop the good and let go of the unwholesome. But when it comes to this true, pure awareness, you actually have to let go of effort. Because effort is a creation of the ego. Because it's about doing something or becoming something. So it's very much our foundation. We use it as a foundation. But just like we use the Eightfold Path as a foundation, the Buddhists said the Eightfold Path is so that we can know and see things as they truly are. And when we can know and see things as they truly are, then there's this complete letting go and this complete freedom from suffering. It's not so straightforward with right effort. You have to really see the ego. When you ask a question like, is there too much effort? You have to see, first of all, is there an ego just trying to get something? What is the effort all about? It's not to say effort isn't useful. There's a use for it. There's a persistence. But this is a reflective teaching. So we always have to keep looking in. And so when we ask a question like, is there too much effort? Look in and see, well, who's the ego that wants to get something? And what is there to get? Because our true nature, this pure awareness, this complete freedom from suffering is here. It's right here, right now. There's nothing to get. It's here in the space between each thought, between each emotion. It's this pureness. And it doesn't mean that we can't have thoughts or emotions, because they're still going to arise. They're just going to arise and cease like bubbles. But they're insignificant. And when we can truly, truly see that we're not that, that's where the freedom is. The word effort is a little bit of a loaded word, maybe for me. I like remembering, so the mindfulness, which I think is absolutely key. We do need to keep reminding ourselves where our refuge is, that the refuge is not in the objects of the mind. But if I had to describe the effort involved because of our conditioning, I would use words like patient endurance, compassion, kindness. Because I think those three things, patient endurance, kindness, and compassion, in my mind, are absolutely needed when the habits of our conditioning are arising. Because we can see an unpleasant memory arise in our mind, and we can abide in the awareness once. But this unpleasant experience could arise 100 times, or 1,000 times, or 100,000 times in the mind. It's just how it is because of how many times, how deeply it's ingrained in the ego identity. So it takes a lot of patient endurance to keep trusting the awareness and not getting lost in, well, I can't do this, my conditioning's too deep, I'm no good, or whatever is coming up. So patient endurance, kindness, and compassion, and I mean kindness and compassion to ourselves. Kindness and compassion, just as an abiding in the heart, acknowledging if this was easy, the world would be a different place. One of the things that happens, the habits of our mind, is to go and think very logically about these things and try and use our cognition, our organizing, planning, the part of the mind that really wants to make sense of all of this and try and come up with a list and see, okay, I have to balance this with this. And I'm not saying that's wrong, but I would encourage trust in the pure awareness that isn't the habit of the mind that wants to make a list or turn this into a cognition. But I would just encourage, take this to the next level, keep trusting in the pure awareness. Because if we want to keep analyzing things and discussing things, it always keeps us on the object level. So it can be very beautiful, there's nothing wrong with it, but for true freedom from suffering, we have to let go of that. We have to let go of the reasoning, cognition, and all the things, even with the Buddha's teachings themselves. It's like we use this path to know and see things as they truly are. And we just have to keep trusting that. And it's a trust. Trust this pure awareness. There's no judgment in it. Pure awareness has no judgment. There's no right or wrong. There's no duality. Just keep remembering the awareness isn't something you create. It's there. It's what knows that you're listening to me and that you're thinking about it right now. The awareness it's like the basic consciousness of our existence. It's there. We just have to learn to relax. It is a relaxing. There's a relaxing happening. It's not a forced letting go. It really is a relaxing. There's nothing to get. There's nowhere to go. Nothing to do. It's just a relaxing. But the ego can pick that up. That's the problem. So the awareness actually has to be aware, and we have to see when the ego picks that up and creates an ego around it. Because it will always want to do that. That's just how it is. That's our habit. That's our conditioning. So then we just return to the awareness. But I think it's good we have a foundation of practices that calm the mind down and practices with objects, and then we work towards letting go. Andamayam Dhammakataya Sadhu Karam